Hello again, Year 6, and welcome back to part 3 of Billy the Kid. We had just left it at the point where Billy had signed up for war and he was part of the medical corps, so his job was going to be looking after the soldiers that were wounded and injured, and he had just got over to Africa, and we left the story at the point where he said it was his first day of war and his last, as it turned out. We spent that morning burying the dead. None of us spoke. We just dug and cursed the flies that wouldn't leave us alone. I was sick a good few times, and it wasn't on account of the heat. It was hot by now, burning hot, hot enough someone said to fry an egg on your helmet. More and more wounded were being brought in all the time. The sound of the guns was coming closer all the while now, and then we heard the chattering of machine gun fire. That same evening we got the order to pull back. We were stretching the wounded into the ambulances when a German armoured column came roaring and clanking towards us out of the desert. They never even bothered to stop, but they just waved and rattled on by. The infantry came behind them. There was a bit of shouting, but no shooting. They just rounded us all up and marched us off. But no one marched in step now. We didn't swing our arms together either. All of that had been for nothing. I was now a prisoner of war. There were thousands of us prisoners of wars. Maybe 30, 40,000, all sat around in the desert, guards wherever you looked. Not that anyone was going to run off. Where would you run to? Tobruk had fallen to the Germans, and there were hundreds of miles of empty desert on one side and the sea on the other. For 3 days we sat there, no food, no water. I'd never been so thirsty in all my life. At night we froze, and in the day we roasted. Then they marched us back into Tobruk, which was full of very happy-looking Germans, and from there they shipped us off to Italy. It was on the ship that I first bumped into Robbie, who turned out to be a lifetime Chelsea supporter. Once he recognised me, he looked after me like I was his little brother. All the way up Italy in that stifling train, packed in like cattle, 4 days it took us, he saw to it that I had enough water and food to keep me going. And when at last we found ourselves marched into a prisoner of war camp somewhere north of Venice, he was right there beside me, almost as if he was protecting me from the guards. And Robbie was a big man, about as broad as he was high, so I felt well protected. We slept in the same hut too, and as the months passed we became the best of mates, and we stayed that way. We didn't get our first letters for months, and some of us got very down about that. Robbie, who was always the chirpy one, he reminded me of Joe sometimes, he did his best to keep my mood up, but I took it hard. Excuse me. Maybe I'll pause it and film the rest in a second.